Alright everybody, this week's video is going to be just a little bit different, mainly because the truck forced us to. We went out the other night and just kind of went out riding around. We're still kind of under the stay-at-home order here, but we did go out and go out to our favorite restaurant, Los Pablos, and picked up our favorite restaurant but brought it take home. And we got back home, pulled up to the garage, went to put the truck in park, and it felt like it engaged in park, but then the keys wouldn't. You couldn't turn the ignition all the way off, and the keys wouldn't come out. Well, there's two indicators on this truck. There's one down on the floor shifter, and then there's a shifter up here on the dash. And even though it felt like it was physically locking into park, and you guys know what I'm talking about, you know, when you let the foot off the brake, you can kind of feel it catch. It felt like it was doing that, but the indicator up here on the dash, which is an electronic indicator, was not indicating park. I could shift to reverse, shift to neutral, drive, manual, any of those other modes, and it lit up just fine, but when you go all the way up to park, it wouldn't go into park. And so therefore, we kind of had to figure out for overnight, because it was already evening, it was already getting dark, didn't want to try to tear it apart that night. Well, the first obstacle was, how do you get the keys out of the truck? Because obviously I didn't want to leave the keys in my truck parked outside overnight. And so I found out, kind of did some Googling, and found out that since it is an electronic park sensor, if you disconnect the battery, it would reset and let the keys come out. You can turn it all the way to the off position, pull the keys out. So that's what we did overnight. So anyways, we get up the next morning, and again, you know, YouTube's a wonderful thing. Was able to find some various different videos on different problems. Didn't ever find one specific to this model year vehicle, but we got enough information to realize that it was probably a sensor down in the floor shifter here that was either off, broke, something, you know, out of a line. Somewhere along you know, those lines was the reason why it wasn't showing in park. So that meant taking the whole center console apart to get to that gear shifter. This is the aftermath. So once we got it all tore down, when we started taking this section right here off, which, you know, kind of shows you all your gears down here on the floor shifter, when we took that off, this piece right here fell out. And you can see, hopefully it's focusing in there, where it is broke right there on the corner. And so then it was a matter of figuring out where this little booger right here went. So once we got in here, we realized what it does is it fits in around this spring assembly right here. And it rests in these ribs. And so as you're doing the gear shifter, this will move down. It's got a roller, kind of like a roller bearing there. And it goes down in these notches. Now, that kind of put us to where it was like, okay, that's probably the problem. But then we was like, well, how is that a sensor that tells it up here on the dash when it's electronically in park? Well, what we realized was, whenever this part broke, this spring right here must have caught these wires. Right, this is the actual sensor right here, where these three wires plug into. And it was raised up out of position. So if you look real close, you'll see this metal bar right here locks into this little sensor. And there's actually a little blue plunger right there. That is your park sensor. And so what happened is, when this broke, it pushed this up. And so therefore this bar was no longer coming into contact with that blue plunger. So we was able to actually pop that back down there. There's actually little grips in there. You can see where that actually snaps down in there. When we did that, everything works fine. You can shift it into park. The ignition will turn all the way off. Keys come out just fine. So then we come down here and was like, okay, this little piece right here that holds a spring, the way it goes in there is it goes up into this collar here, and then this piece slides out, which brings off this whole spring assembly. And again, this is that piece I showed you earlier where this goes together. So that whole thing fits up into that collar there. Well, by the time I got all this apart on a Saturday, obviously the Ford dealer was already closed. I like to go, I normally always go to the Ford dealer, picking up all my parts. I like keeping everything genuine Motorcraft, and you know, keep it as good as new. But they was already closed, so I thought, well, I'm pretty sure it's going to be a dealer only part. But I went ahead and rode down to AutoZone. There's an AutoZone here just about a mile below the house, and I knew they was open and allowed to be open under the stay-at-home orders. So we went down there and had them look it up. And of course, they couldn't get it, which confirmed my suspicion that it would be a dealer only part. So at that point, we're stranded until Monday. So we'll just leave the truck apart, because there's no sense putting it all back together until we get the part to put it back together with. Well, today Kimberly goes down to the Ford dealership and tries to get them to order this part. Well, when they pull up, you know, the Ford dealer has a neat thing where they can pull up every part, and it has what they call an exploded view. And so it's like the part just blows apart and shows you all the different pieces and everything that you can purchase. Well, the problem is you can't purchase this little piece. You actually have to purchase this whole gear shifter. You can either purchase just the shift knob, which is normally on here, which ain't on here right now, which is like the little gun handle shift knob, or you can buy the whole actual assembly that bolts down to the transmission tunnel where your transmission cable hooks to and goes to your transmission. You can't buy just this little plastic piece. Well, this whole shift assembly is $221, and that's before taxes. Well, the more I got to playing with it, I can't figure out what the actual purpose of this is. Maybe there's some of you guys out there that's more educated than I am. Maybe there's some engineers out there. Maybe there's some Ford techs out there that can tell me actually the purpose of this. But I'll show you here, because I thought with it going into these grooves here, you would think that, okay, it's probably so that the gear shifter will lock into place. But that's not the case. You can see right now, currently the vehicle is in park. Here's reverse, neutral, drive, and you see it's locked into place. It will not slip out of place. I can go all the way back up into park again, and it locks into place. And I'll show you up here in this selector now. Now that I've got this sensor correct, you can see right here that it is registering in park. What it was doing before is it would register in reverse, neutral, drive. It'll register in all these other ones. But when I got home that night, it kind of went right here, and it would engage in park, but it wouldn't engage here. But once I got that sensor back in place, you see it now does. And if you look down here, the keys will turn off the ignition and come completely out of the ignition. If this does not engage right here into park, see if I can make it do it now. When you turn it off, the truck still thinks it's in gear, and so therefore it won't let you turn this all the way off and your key won't come out. But as soon as you engage that back into park, easy peasy. And so that's kind of where I'm at, is since we can't buy just this one little plastic piece that's broke, to have to buy the whole assembly for $220 when I can't find any functionality to it just doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. And so basically we're left with two options. Well, I guess three options. We could buy the whole assembly for $220, which I've already ruled that out. I could try super gluing this piece, but I'm not real thrilled about this idea, because And I'll show you when we put this back together. I'll show you exactly how to get all of this off, because it was hard finding good information on how to get down to this section. So I'm going to film the video on that too. And it's not easy. It takes a lot to get down to this part. And so I really don't want to take the chance of super gluing this thing and then it breaking again, causing that spring to hit these wires. Because if it hits these wires, it's either going to break a wire or it's going to knock the sensor out of place again, and I'll be back in the same situation I was before. And so I'm not real keen on that idea. So the third option to me is I'm going to pull this whole spring assembly out and I'm going to leave it out. And I'm going to put it back together and we're going to hope for the best. And I'll let you know. We'll follow up here in a few months, few episodes. If something, and I'll be honest, if I get to driving this in a week and it tears up or it messes something else up or it doesn't function properly, I'll be sure to let you guys know. But I've played out here with it. I've shifted it in all gears, reversed it, drove it forward, and I can't find any reason to have to pay $220 to get that little plastic piece. And so that was kind of the reason why we was actually planning on a trip to shoot another video at a place we call Gibbs Gardens here in Georgia, but we didn't get to do that Saturday because we was working on the truck most of the day Saturday. And so anyways, I just kind of wanted to show you guys that. I know it's not your typical RV video, but I know there's a lot of people out there that do use F-150s to tow their campers. And since I had such a hard time finding information and videos showing all this, I just kind of wanted to break it down for everybody, and I hope it's useful for somebody at some point out there. And so now we're going to put this thing back together, and I'll show you how all this comes apart, just so that you have it for reference, and so you don't have such a hard time as I did trying to get everything apart. Okay, basically everything you need to get all this stuff off to get in there to that gear shifter, you're going to need a T30 Torx screwdriver, a T20, a flat screwdriver. I like this shorty one, and I'll explain more why I like the shorty one. You can use a longer one in some other places, but there's two places in particular you're going to need a short one. And I did use a pair of needle nose pliers simply because there was one of these wire connectors down here that my big fat fingers, I just couldn't get a hold of it good enough and press the release in and pull it at the same time. So I did use some needle nose pliers on that. Now, most of it is pretty simple as far as getting it off and going back together. The hardest part is this very last part right here. And so basically you have four pieces right here that have all got to go together almost at the same time. So basically you have your white piece, turn it the right way here. You have this piece, which is your orange dial for your shifter. This goes over it so it highlights it. And then you actually have your shifter knob with all your electronics in it. Now, if you'll notice, when you're taking this apart, I know I'm showing you kind of in reverse here, you have to take this off to get these off, simply because if you have this bolted down on there, it will not fit through the slot. And these wires aren't long enough for you to just raise this up and get it off the shifter and then get this off without disconnecting the wires. And so it's kind of a combination thing here to get all this apart. And these two pieces right here actually lock together with that sandwich in between it, and then locks down on clips right here. There's 4 points, and you can see the little tips that it sits on here. And so what we got to do, first off, we got to get this white piece back down. And in this white piece, there's 2 light bulbs that hold this white piece from coming all the way off once you pop off the little tabs. And what I did was I wanted to make sure I didn't reverse these light bulbs. And so when I took it off, I made sure I laid the one that came out the front towards the front, the other one towards the back. And so what we'll do here is we'll go down here, and you see this is a very, very short wire right here. And so that really hamstrings you if you don't take that bulb out to get down in here. And so these bulbs just simply go in and they do a half twist to lock into place. And then we'll put the front one in. Same way, you just got to find the little tabs. Insert the tabs through. When I say half a turn, it's more like a quarter turn. And that locks that bulb into place. And so now we got that on there. And it fits. There's only one way it'll fit in here. You see it fits over these tabs. They lock it right down into place. There's also one in the back. So there's 5 points there that it sits on. Now the fun part is there is 2 sets of wires here that you have got to get hooked up for the shifter. Now you see we've got our 2 bulbs hooked back into their places. Right here is one of the connecting points for the shifter. Here's that. This one's got a little bit of play into it, but this one has no play whatsoever. So we have got to get this piece set on, because again that won't go over the shifter. We have to get this piece set on loosely. Then we have to get this shifter set on and get the wires fed through all this mess. This is the worst part of the whole thing that we did, other than getting the front part of this console off. So I'm just going to feed these wires down through here, try to reach up in here and pull them through. And again, you want to be very ginger. These are very small wires. Don't want to pull on them. Don't want to pull them out of the brackets. Definitely don't want to break a wire. Okay, so now if you can see around my big fat hands here, you see we've got this one connected back and this one connected back. So when you take it off, there's a 2 green wires and then there's a black, brown, white that you got to unplug. And to do that, you'll see there's a little tab right here. All you got to do is simply take a screwdriver right up in under there, pry that up so that tab will come out. This is why I actually use some needle nose pliers, just to help me get a better grip and pull that apart. So you just disconnect those 2 sets of wires. There's 2 screws, one on each side, that goes in here on this shifter. I'll show you best putting that in there a minute ago, and here in a minute. And that's what holds this shifter in place down on the actual shifter knob. So, but now that we got these wires hooked up, we're going to try to get everything pulled back down in here, and we just unhooked one of those. Just tell you, this is not made for a fat hand. And then once you get all those wires connected back, it's just a matter of setting this back down where I showed you those connection points earlier. And this black piece clips right over this top piece. You can see where it clipped here, it clipped here. There's 2 more on the other side. So now all that's in place. Now we'll get our knob in here. You can see the screw holes here. We'll take our I think it was a T20 screw on each side. And it's a very, very short screw. So when you're taking it out, just know that that screw didn't have about 4 threads on it. And so you don't want to drop it off down inside the middle of your console here and have to get it later. So just be very careful with that. The torch screwdrivers I use are actually magnetic, and so they hang on to it. So we'll put our 2 screws in here, and then I'll show you how to put the leather wrap back on. Go. One on that side, and then we'll jump over and get the other side. Okay. Now, shifter handle secured back into place. All this is back in place. And then just for my own sanity check, I'm going to engage it in gear here and make sure everything works properly. Works like she should. Now we got to put the leather grips back on each side of this shifter knob here, and you see there's two sides. It's very obvious which side goes on which, and you'll see these little pins right here. There's 4 on each one, and so it's just a matter of lining it up with those holes, and it just snaps right back into place. Just make sure all 4 of those clips in there. Now the trick to when you're getting it off, once you get this first side off, the first side, that one broke, you kind of pry off very, very easily with a small screwdriver. And then once you get it off, you'll see the tab holes right through here. You can insert your screwdriver right through there to help push those tabs down and pop this one off. There's 4 points. Actually, there's 3 good points to get it through here, and once you get those 3, the 4th one will just come right out. Just be careful of that top one. And you just snap right in place. So now we got both sides of the knob back on there. Good as new. Okay, let me show you the connection points on this one, because this was the, next to getting all that shifter assembly off, this was the hardest piece to get off. You got 6 connection points. You got 2 back here at the back cup holders. You got 2, which is right here at the front of the console where your door lifts up. And then there's 2 in the very front. And I don't know if it'll show up in the camera here with the sun glare. These are the 2 front ones. And let me tell you, those are a booger to get to. So basically, you have to shift it out of park to even get this piece on there. That gives you enough clearance to get it here in front of this shifter knob. I apologize for the beeping, but it's because I can't pull the keys out, guys. Okay, let me correct myself, guys. There's actually 8 points. There's 2 more right here that goes right here in the center part. But what happens when you're taking this off, you grab back here at the cup holders and you'll lift and it'll pop these back 2. Then you lift here, it'll pop these 2. And then as you raise up, these 2 right here will pop out. The 2 that get stuck is the 2 up here in the very front. And what you have to do is you have to lift this thing all the way up, and then take that little screwdriver I showed you earlier, and you've got to reach up in under here and apply a little pressure to that metal clip to pop it out of the hole. And so there's 1 on each side. And I'll tell you, this plastic's sharp in places. I kind of cut my hand up a little bit the first time I done it there. But just know that's really, other than getting this the plastic off around the gear shift assembly with the wires and not having much slack, that's really the hardest part of getting this whole thing apart. And so I'm going to lower this back down into place and get this back together, and I'll show you the final 2 steps. Okay. Alright, now you can see everything's firmly back down into place there. Like I said, there's 2 clips here, 2 clips here. There's 2 clips, 1 on each side here, and then the 2 boogers are right up here. But going back in, it goes in a whole lot easier than it comes out. Next step, take your actual glove box here. And all it simply does is go in here, and there's 3 T30 screws that'll screw that back in there, and that holds all that piece in there. Okay, got those 3 screws in place. You see it easily latches there. Last step is this assembly right here, which is your cup holder, and then your last wire, because this does have the lighted cup holders, and that just simply plugs in once you set that in. And I strongly advise you guys, since you got all this apart anyways, go ahead and give it a good cleaning, because there's some nook and crannies here that you can't reach on a normal basis when you're detailing. And so I'm just taking advantage of it and giving it all good cleaning. Down inside this gear shifter here, when I was cleaning all it, they looked like somebody had maybe spilled a Coke or something down inside that gear shifter at one time. And so I took the opportunity to wipe all that out.
That somebody couldn't have been you.
No, definitely couldn't have been me. Never. So we get this oriented back around. Again, here's the wire for the cup holder. See if I can fit my fat hand back up in there. Oh, gotta shift it back out into gear again, because it's just not enough room in between there. Wire plugs in there. And like I said, this is the easiest piece to get off. Hopefully it goes back on just as easy. It's kind of got a little lip right here. You just fit that in up there, make sure it fits under, and clips right back down into place. Back into part. Everything's good to go. We'll put our little rubber inserts back in here in the cup holders and everything, and we're good to go. So again, I hope that helps some people out there at some point. If you ever have a problem and your shift indicator light up here, your electronic shift indicator light, this is a manual shift indicator light. You see you got your park, reverse, neutral, drive down here on your shifter, but this works strictly off your mechanical shifter right here. It is not electronic. This one up here on your dash is electronic. That's where your sensors read to, and that's what'll keep you from turning the ignition all the way off and pulling your keys out if that sensor ever goes bad, gets knocked out of alignment. And so basically what I showed you today is how to get down in there to that. A workaround temporarily, if you was out somewhere in public, had to get your keys out, unhook your battery. If you unhook your battery, it resets that sensor, then you're able to turn the key off and pull your keys all the way out of the ignition temporarily. Now, so next time you crank it up and go back to put it back in park again, it's going to do the same thing again until you get this problem down here fixed. But as you see, that little, I have no idea what that part's called. I wish I did. I went to the Ford dealer today. They didn't even know what it was called. But when it broke with that spring around it, without replacing the whole shifter, there was no getting that part. And I hate to sound cheap, but to me, paying $220 something for something that really doesn't serve any function that I can tell at this point was just a little much to me. You know, so like I say, if I drive it a week and I start noticing some problems or anything like that, one, I'll let you guys know. I'll make sure I post it in the comments and give you updates along the way if there is anything else. And then two, if I have to go back in there, I'll definitely do a video on taking all that apart again. But honestly, I've played with it enough. I don't think we're going to have any issues. And so, I know it's a different video than you're used to seeing for us, but I know there's a lot of F150 guys out there, not knocking Chevrolet guys. I like Chevrolets too. But right now, what I've got is an F150, and I love my truck, and want to take care of it the best I can. And hopefully showed you a few tips, so if any of you guys ever need to take any of that off, even if just for cleaning, you know, at least now you know how to get all that center console apart and get down to the shifter. And so tune in next week, and then hopefully we'll get back on the road and get you some more videos. And so if anybody knows what that's called, if there is a purpose to it, you know, anything like that, please shoot me a comment, shoot me an email, let me know. I would love to know. I'd love to be more educated if I could. So if anybody knows any information, by all means shoot me a comment. And if there's anything I missed and you've got a question on, shoot me a comment. I'll be happy to answer it as best I can. See you guys next week.